Hello and welcome into a special Sorare data stream. Today, we are joined by Kate Schrumpf from Sorare, the Director of Product Director.
Product, yeah.
Okay. Today, talk about Sorare NBA Season 2, Sorare MLB postseason that is coming up. Kate, people are really excited. I think there's probably been a lot of excitement at Sorare over the last few weeks. How does it feel to get at least the postseason MLB and the NBA roadmap out to everybody?
It feels incredible. I mean, we've been sitting there behind the scenes working on these for months, really. It's been a lot of, digging through and internal debate again, and really landing a lot of these things that we were hopeful would get really positive reception. And so I think, seeing the reception of it, not just having it out there, but seeing the reception has been really enlivening. We're so excited.
I was joking to you a few minutes ago that I have like this long list of questions and that the roadmap ruined a lot of them because you guys answered them in the roadmap. We are still going to go through a bunch of things. Before we get into that, do you mind just taking like a minute to tell everyone kind of your background, how you got to Sorare, and basically who we're listening to here?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a lifelong sports fan, totally unathletic. But when I was like 5, I declared I was going to be the first woman to play for Major League Baseball. Like that did not play out. It was nowhere close to playing out, but I loved the sport. And so when I left school, I had an opportunity to, after my first initial job, to go work for ESPN. And that, of course, was just a dream. So I went and worked on their Alexa skill, brief-lived, but that was sort of my legacy there. And then on the ESPN Plus launch, which was huge. And then I was a Boston resident commuting to Connecticut. So I went, okay, I want to move back to Boston and be there full time, and moved to DraftKings. Had, an incredible run there, working on data science, working on the marketing platform and things when they were introducing sports books and casinos, like a really exciting time. And so I was really entrenched in the sports tech space. It was a great merger of passion and career aspiration. And, I had an old ESPN colleague who was working at Sorare, Ryan Spoon, and he knew I was in Paris actually traveling as sort of like a whim post-COVID travel thing. And he was like, hey, I know you're in Paris. This company's here. I think you've heard of it. I was like, yeah, I play it. And he was like, I'm looking to hire a director of product. Do you want to come over? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I want to try, I love the product. I love playing it. I thought, it would be so exciting to join a company at that stage. I had an inkling of where it was going. And yeah, so that's how I ended up at Sorare. At this point, I'm kind of a utility player. I'm mostly focused on MLB and NBA, but I came in working on platform, and I basically just hop in wherever I can be of service.
So actually, I'm glad you kind of bring that up, because I'm curious if you guys kind of treat the 3 products as completely separate products, or if football is kind of different than, and you kind of put MLB and NBA together. Like how much, I don't even want to call it collaboration, because I do think that they are different, but like how much overlap is there with the products that, because we do see there are plenty of overlapping things, the collection game that we're going to see now in NBA and MLB that launched with football. Like what's kind of the way that the 3 of them work, or do you guys keep them separate?
Right. So we try and find a balance between what's unique about the sport and what's helpful to keep harmonious between Sorare games. Right. And I think what you're seeing in part with this NBA roadmap launch is that as we've seen the evolution of the manager population on Sorare, we're starting to see, how many people play multiple sports, or how are you referring your friends, or things like that. We're starting to think a little bit more about investing in commonalities in many of these spaces. I'm sure we'll talk about some specifics later. But really what we think about is, one thing, for example, is in gameplay. When we went to introduce NBA last season, it was really obvious that the nature of the NBA game required different gameplay than MLB or football had, right? Positionless approach, the capped approach, all of this was due to the nature of how NBA was playing, and it was authentic to the more positionless way of playing that the NBA itself is moving to. On the other hand, something like, is the website dark mode or light mode? Whereas like previously you might have seen more differentiation there. I think we're starting to think more about a holistic experience and how managers can really have fun who enjoy multiple sports, or things that we know are really succeeding in one sport or well received, and inheriting it so that managers of all sports can benefit.
Okay. So I feel like that is the perfect segue to the scarcity, but I'm not going to bring it up yet. And I know a lot of people are interested. We will talk about that. But just looking back to season 1 of NBA, what were some of the things that you guys looked at that you were like, we really nailed that, or consequently, like maybe this missed it and we need to make a change to that?
So I'll start with the positives. I think for a first season, and I know everyone's going to go like, "Oh, you need to go get new users," right? But I think that getting 500,000 new signups in a first season is like it's something I'm pleased with. It's something we're pleased with, and we want to grow way bigger. But that was one thing that just in terms of numbers, we were very excited by. I think we saw some good prices coming out of some of our cards, right? Like the Giannis Unique at 187,000, Luca at 70,000, right? Like these are great signals for a product that's being developed over time. And then, as I alluded to, like I personally love where we went with the scoring matrix and the approach to gameplay. I think it felt very authentic to basketball. It's something that was well received early on, and I think still has quite a few fans, and I loved that. Where do we have a lot of room for improvement? One, I think communication and transparency. We hear your calls for it. And this is one thing that I've really asked us as a team to be thinking more about is how can we pull the curtain back a little bit? How can we think a little bit more about these things in terms of a collaboration or a sharing space, right? And then I think another thing that we heard loud and clear that was disappointing is our treatment of tentpole events, right? So as we're approaching this new season, we're thinking very deeply about, how we handled postseason last year, for example, and going, okay, how could we be better at not just, we were laser focused on how do we get a game that works last season. And now we're going, okay, well, actually, as basketball fans, we know that those tentpole moments are the most exciting part of the game for fans. And so they're going to be disproportionately disappointing if we don't deliver on them. And so that's actually a core part of our strategy now is thinking about how can we make those moments more fun or more exciting while still maintaining a really solid product throughout the year.
So it does seem like you guys have done that with MLB postseason, kind of introducing this I don't want to call it season long, postseason long competitions, kind of the longer forms. Is there any, I'm going to assume it's a success. And if it is a success, is that just kind of what we can look forward to for the NBA as well?
I think it'll definitely be the seed for the NBA. I don't want to say we stop learning by something that's successful, but if it's successful, we'll want to continue to build on that and not go a completely different direction, right? I think that some of the things that I'm really excited about for the MLB postseason is not just the lengthier competitions, but this idea of special edition cards that you win, right? I think when that idea came up, there was this light bulb moment where we went, well, that's really special, right? And that's really true to the DNA of Sorare as a game of collectibles of, you can point to this and not only say like, I like this player, so I collected him, but I won that on the postseason is a very special moment. And one I hope that the managers find more exciting and something that we can continue to work with.
So I'm glad you brought that up because it does feel like on the football side, there seems to have been like a significant drop off in special edition cards that we used to have. And to be honest, they probably weren't even that many of them, but it just felt like there were more often. Like remember like the Sunrise edition, and we had the Golden Boys, and we had the Champion edition cards when clubs won their domestic league, and people love that stuff. And it does feel like it's kind of tapered off. And I realize that there's always going to be some licensing issues sometime, or negotiations that have to go into changing cards, I guess. And I would assume that the benefit of NBA and MLB is that you're not having to deal with 50 leagues throughout the world. It's literally just one each. And so the special edition cards, I remember like when the MLB postseason announcement came out, that was one thing that jumped out to a lot of people like, oh, special edition cards are fun. I'm really glad we can see that. And I think there was the mixed reaction to the NBA draft edition cards was not that people didn't like them. It's that we just wanted more of them. Mm-hmm. And I think it was like, they were kind of submitted, or they were kind of presented to us like these are one-time special edition things, but they were also still just rare cards and not uniques. I don't know what like personally, my opinion was, let's just do more of them. Like if there were 20, Wembenyama cards or whoever, or more players as opposed to those 5. But I do love seeing that the special edition cards are, at least we know that you guys are considering it, because the fewer that came in football, it was more like, oh, I really hope they're not getting rid of these. But actually, it's very encouraging to hear that you guys are looking to expand on them, I'd say.
We really are. And I think we're thinking of them more as a strategy now. It's not just, okay, we've got this thing. How do we plug the hole? What could be exciting? Oh, let's do a card, right? It's more, especially with, the success of the collection game in football. That's part of the roadmap update, is we're going to be bringing that over, right? I know that we'd heard occasional feedback, for example, with the action shot poses on NBA last season. People were like, oh, these are really cool. I like the look of them, but what's the benefit, right? Like, I think that's the beauty and the balance of this game, is you want collectability and excitement on the visuals, but you also want utility. And I think that what we saw with that football collection game was a great balance there, and a great connector that allows us to go, okay, special edition cards now are not only a great way to celebrate moments with visuals and collectability, but also something that now we have a built-in system for gaining utility off of. And so what we can do is now start to plan in strategically, what are the moments throughout the year that we can celebrate with these? And then what are the right, ratios of cards we should be setting out, depending on how special these moments are. I think the draft edition cards in particular, we were looking at as, I think in particular, having a Frenchman going in the draft so high, right? We were really looking at this and going, this is almost a unique collectible moment. Like, we want to make this a rare card, but we want it to feel like a moment where you're getting almost a one of one, right? I think that MLB postseason is a different moment, right? Where you want to feel like you're winning something out of the postseason. I think that our strategy at this point is more along, let's make the special edition cards be part of the Sorare experience in a way that's authentic to the moment.
Was there much discussion about making those draft edition cards actual uniques?
Not a ton of discussion, transparently. No, I think that we also wanted it to feel pretty accessible, right? It wanted to feel like something that people could, could go after and could dream about and could want to own, right? So it wasn't a ton of debate, actually, surprisingly.
Okay. The reason I hesitate is, given that they're only one of each of these, and knowing the users that ended up with them, they weren't really available to everybody.
Right.
So if that's the case, why not just make them uniques? I don't know I don't have a question on that, actually, other than just like, I think that they were presented as if they were they are presented as if they are unique in terms of there is not another card like this, but not having it be a unique, almost, I don't want to say it devalues it, but it does kind of devalue it a little bit, because you can't play it in unique competitions, and so I don't know. I still think that was a bit puzzling.
Yeah, I can definitely see where the rationale is puzzling, and that the outcome probably feeds into that. I think this is also something that we're learning on, right? As you pointed out, special edition cards are something that we're iterating into at this point. It wasn't a ton of debate internally, but I think, like, having learned from it, will we do the same thing in the future? I think that's something that we'll discuss as we move forward and have strategies that reflect those kinds of things.
Since I have you here, as somebody who has been to like 10 NBA drafts, I love NBA draft stuff. And so more NBA draft cards is certainly a win for me.
Noted.
So speaking of cards, you guys changed the scarcities, or the scarcity numbers, excuse me. Scarcity is the same. Obviously they were different from football. That football had been around for a while. We're now moving back to, or we're moving to match the football scarcity numbers. If you could go into the kind of conversations and decisions on what went into the original scarcity numbers, and then why you moved them to the football ones this year.
Sure. So I think that we've been pretty transparent about our original decision, like why we made the decision. I'll pull the curtain back a little bit on where the debate was, right? So in the original conversation, I think what we could identify was that we had the levers in place, both directions, for supply management relative to user growth, right? So on the football side, you saw that with the introduction of limited, right? That you had these set ratios, user growth grew, we introduced limited, we knew that was a tool in the pocket. On the other direction, we knew, max mint counts are not necessarily how many get minted in a season. In fact,
Sure.
for the most part, it's not what gets minted in a season. And so we went one way or the other. We have the tools in our pocket to ensure that actual supply is calibrated according to demand and that we can move with the business. And so it came down to a little bit of like, what's overall preference for which of these we would like to be the lever that we're using now or in the future, and what feels more authentic to the needs of the sport. And I think that second piece, and this is what, we shared with everyone, is we sat down and we have real ambitions for these sports, and we still do. It's not like we're any less ambitious than we were before, but we were sitting down and going, well, unlike the player population in football, which is massive, we've got limited player populations on this side. And we think that it's more authentic to that on an entire supply range rate space to have larger max mints per player, right? We did the math on it and we went, that just makes more sense. Realistically, we could make either decision and be fine on the economy, but we'll go with this one. Now, if I can sort of fast forward to today, right, we're sitting around, and I think, as I said earlier, we're starting to look at more harmonization across the product in general. That was certainly part of the conversation. Understandability was part of the conversation. And part of it was also just revisiting that and going, okay, well, this decision, if we change it, it doesn't mean that we've changed our opinion on user growth. It just means we're changing our opinion on what the better path to maintaining the economy there is. And really the deciding factor is we all looked around and went, the important thing about these cards is that they feel scarce, that they feel premium, and that users are excited about them. And when we framed it that way, the decision flipped the other direction, right? And that's ultimately what led to this, is us going, these should feel premium, and we feel like this is the right decision, having learned what we've learned over a season of NBA, 2 seasons of MLB.
So that basically leads to the question is, if we do see this explosion of users, the new users, is the move then to introduce a new scarcity of that 5,000 that we had for the limiteds, or is it possible that you change the limiteds again back to 5,000?
So I think that the internal discussions are very much around, like, we've seen this with football before. We've successfully handled it with football before. Now, have we written an official guidebook that goes, in the event of user spike, here is the playbook? No, right? And I think that that's part of the continued monitoring and movement here. Now, I will say, like, the decision to move down was certainly an easier one because we knew the ultimate benefits as well to managers. Like, we don't forget what this does to managers who own cards today. And so I do think, like, personally, when you go consider what tools are in your toolbox there, these aren't weighted equally.
Sure.
They're very much weighted according to the impact on existing galleries and what will happen there. So while I don't want to be the person on record right now telling you a playbook that doesn't exist, I'll say, like, that's definitely something that we're looking at, as like, what's worked well in the past, and what can we do that we know will help not hurt managers who own cards right now.
So obviously a decrease in the total number of cards that you guys can mint in a season means that the number of rewards that can be given away is going to decrease. And there was talk in the roadmap about Sorare coins will be rewarded at some point, and tickets and all this different stuff. Is there going, like, do you guys see a path where you have competitions that say, yes, we are giving card rewards, but at some point you're going to have to give something else because there are not enough cards to give away? And sort of what's the path there for you guys?
So I think that and you already see this in football, you see it in baseball, it's moving into NBA. I think a year ago, Sorare's reward pool was cards. And today, Sorare's reward pool is cards, cash or ETH, right? Coins and the associated things you can exchange them for in the club shop, and in real life rewards as direct prizing, right? And I think looking at that full portfolio, we are going to construct competitions moving forward that leverage all of those things. And so, yes, I think that right, it's basic math and everyone knows it, that the mint counts translate into how much we can reward. But we also have other tools now to reward that should be really satisfying to users, right? Like I personally would love to win tickets to, the NBA All-Star game or a Celtics jersey or, cash, right? So hopefully those kinds of things are also, as tools in our toolbox, able to make these things really satisfying and engaging and exciting, maybe even more so than just the existing card rewards we had before.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said it that way, because there was a point where I think it was Dan, maybe it was a lock, but there was a line at some point from Sorare that said, at some point we are going to make it so Sorare managers actually want to win coins more than cards. And I don't think we're there yet. And so I don't think the football club shop is really at a point where people are saying, oh, I really want to win coins so that I can get this. The jerseys, the mystery jerseys, I think people are having a lot of fun with it. The frustration that comes from those is not that people are frustrated with what they get, but actually that they are not able to get those things. And so that's obvious that there is a demand for those things. People want to use their coins for those. The big one, like the huge change, obviously, is the ability to win cash or ETH. That was introduced in MLB for this season. The sort of feedback that I've heard of it is that there is very little that Sorare managers are doing in their galleries and in their lineups specifically to win cash. Like it's not enough to change what they're doing. And there's also a very big difference between the MLB cash rewards and football in terms of the threshold. And that, now you just have to beat a score instead of beat everybody else. So you guys did kind of announce that in the roadmap that there will be cash rewards. I don't think anybody's expecting you to say like, this is exactly how to do it. But if you could give us maybe a little bit, if there are discussions about thresholds of more of a beat the game as opposed to, beating everyone else, and what the concept at least is, so that we have that going into the season.
Sure. Right. So I won't have exact numbers. That's actually something that'll be released very shortly. We're going to have a blog post and everything, and I'm sure everyone is nervously, excitedly awaiting those. I'm excited for them, so hopefully that reassures you. But I think that to pull back on what is the nature of the cash rewards in that discussion internally? So what we're going to lean into on NBA, like we did with MLB, although, supply of cash might change, right? The approach is going to be much like card rewards. You win by beating other managers. So we're going to really lean into the competitive nature of the game as a peer-to-peer fantasy game. Okay. I think that, thresholds are something I know people really love on football. I think you'll probably be really excited if I said we were doing it on NBA, but as we look at it, I think like the DNA that we're really leaning into is that peer-to-peer competitiveness. And I think we have a really exciting approach to cash rewards coming this season in NBA. And I hope when those details are announced, people celebrate that as well.
Okay. I thank you to everybody who has joined us live in the chat. I haven't really touched on it much, but there is this comment I want to bring up, because we were just talking about the rewards, from Andy Blackhair. It said, I love that tickets are rewards, but it's really difficult to get to games across various parts of the country on short notice. So what is the kind of the solution to that? And obviously makes it a little more difficult with international users who then have to come to the US if they won MLB or NBA tickets. And so, not to say that winning tickets is bad, but is there kind of what is the solution then? If I win, I'm right outside of New York and I win Lakers tickets tomorrow, I can't really easily fly to LA. Well, I mean, technically I can, but it's costing me more than what the tickets are probably worth. So like, what's the thinking in terms of giving away tickets as prizes to people who may not be able to utilize them?
Yeah. So, transparently, we're talking in depth in this at the company right now. This is one of those things we don't have an exact solution for, but I can say a few of the things that we're discussing, right? One is making ticket rewards something that's rewarded earlier, so that there's more opportunity to work back and forth with sort of logistics plans or, whatever you can do to make that a more exciting experience for someone who does win it as a reward for a competition. So that's one thing we're thinking about, is just, still give it, but give it on a time period that could either conceivably work better or that you can work out a better mutually beneficial outcome to. The other thing is, as we develop the club shop out, I think that, I'll say when I've played or been part of loyalty programs that have sports tickets in their equivalent of a club shop, that's really nice because you're opting in to purchase those, but it's still something that you're looking to achieve over time. And I think, we're going to try and find this mix of giving these things as competition rewards, which maybe have more logistical difficulty, but are really exciting because you can point to that competition and go, that's what I won this off of, right? And then balancing that with things that are maybe in a shop where you're more choosing where you want to allocate your rewards over time. And I think that's a little bit of where when a locker or whoever was saying before, like, oh, we want you to really want coins. We want you to want coins more than anything. I think that's the vision for that future as a club shop that's so stacked with things you really want, but that you don't want to be opted into without your choice, right?
I love the sound of that, for sure. And Courtside here brought it up in the chat, but I was going to also I forget what game week it was on the football side, but it was like a La Liga ticket experience where you won a card that the holder of that card or the owner of that card at a specific date was the one who won the tickets. So is it possible that these ticket prizes are given as NFTs and essentially making them sellable, but also collectible in the sense of, oh, I did win this competition and that this card shows that I was able to win then, and something like that.
Yeah, I love that idea. I know that we've looked in the past we've had auctions where, you win an NFT card, and as part of winning that NFT card, you get the right to obtain some in real life experience or merch or something. And I think like that sounds like an extension of that. It's a really cool idea.
Okay. All right. So also on the topic of club shop, because I felt like they were mixed a little bit on the initial announcement with the Sorare football fitness announcement, and that they were going to implement this new change to the game that was essentially an introduction to microtransactions on Sorare. Is there talk to doing that on the NBA and MLB side? Obviously the fitness thing, I don't know if you guys are talking about that from a gameplay perspective, but will there be opportunities for these like microtransactions in NBA and MLB in whatever form?
So I think microtransactions themselves, maybe not, but I'll address like the bigger topic, right? Which is fitness. I hope everyone sort of saw the signals there that what we're looking at in the business is, how do we make, and you did a really great video on this recently, right? Is the question of sustainability in the long run and what's happening with our platform. And I think that whether or not that looks like fitness, whether or not that looks like microtransactions of any sort, right? Like these are all things that we're deeply talking about right now is what this future looks like. And everyone go watch that podcast episode, because that actually sort of, I think, delved deeply and very accurately into how complicated that kind of problem is, right? What I will say to the question, which I think was like, okay, if football's looking at this, are you looking at this? And the answer is that we are at this stage in the company, anything that doesn't seem really specific to a sport. So it's not like, NBA position lists or something like that. We're sitting down with all the sports and kind of like co-vetting it, right? And so while football is leading the future right now, discussions of fitness, because they're the ones that sort of like kick that off, right? I'm now deeply engaged in that as well. That's evolved very deeply, right? And so I think that there's anything that comes to football or comes to NBA or comes to MLB that's not sport specific, we're talking about it from a multi-sport point of view in an ongoing way.
Well, great, because one of the questions that came in the chat, which I was going to try to hit on, but Swingman brought this up. Can you give some more details on the NBA daily gameplay? And the biggest reason I'm curious about this is it was announced for football. It hasn't come out yet. I think they're still testing it. But the biggest question I had with that one is that a kind of a Sorare wide game where we're competing for prizes distributed by Sorare or rewarded by Sorare, or am I just playing against my friends and we figure out what happens if somebody wins?
So It's a Sorare-based game. It's a Sorare-based daily game. It has a lot of similar components to the current Sorare game. And it is one that we're building across sports right now. So it's not just a football one, even though they've only really started to announce football, right? We're thinking about this for NBA as well for this season, and that was part of that announcement. I think much like, and I forgot to make this note, and it was a core one that I should have when discussing the fitness question is, when one of the things we've learned over the last year, and I think learned really well, is with core changes, we need to be more deeply looking into manager reactions earlier, right? We need to be like actually testing these things through user testing and your typical, betas and things like that, and getting feedback sooner and more regularly. This game is going through beta right now in football. And in NBA, we're taking learnings from that. And so the shape of it in the long run is something that's being actively developed right now in consultation with managers who are testing that out. And eventually we'll do a similar thing with NBA. So like, what do rewards look like? I feel like is the follow-up question to that. And I don't have that answer, but I will say that like the core of it is very true to the DNA of Sorare. But it's a game that is supposed to be, very social in nature and more daily in the game loop, which hopefully should help you get your friends to play, which I know it's been hard for me to get my friends to play when they're like, oh, this is a major commitment, right?
I can confirm it's a major commitment. So one of the other announcements was kind of the I want to call it regularly irregular competitions that underdog or any sort of under 23, if we had those. What was the reason behind not having them basically be regular competitions all the time? And if the reason is simply we don't have enough rewards, I get that. But is there the thought that people don't want these all the time, or is it just that from a reward perspective it can't be handled? Like regular underdog seems like something that a lot of people would be interested in, but only having it every 4 game weeks or whatever the time frame is just feels a little off to me.
Yeah. So as of right now, what we're looking to do is the goal right now is to offer more variety in gameplay. So I think that we can hear the message like, I love the game, but I've played the same tournament week over week over week, right? And so actually what we're trying to introduce is a way to have more variety in gameplay over time. And so we're looking into those specials that football had a history of, right? That when we've introduced them, we've gotten good feedback on, and trying to make those more of a core part of the experience this season and testing those out. Now, like I think you've seen before, right? We get positive feedback on something and it looks like it should be a stable competition. We're not opposed to making stable competitions. We've done that with the conference specific leagues and things like that.
Yep.
But right now, I think the problem statement that we're trying to address is, hey, I want more variety in the gameplay. I've collected a lot of cards. I want to do more with them. Give me more opportunities. And that's where we're trying to approach that right now.
So something just popped in. I was going to ask it before and it left my head and it just came back. But back to the testing things, at least for the daily game, but generally in terms of testing new things overall. Have you guys previously used like specific users to either, get their specific feedback, almost like a focus group essentially? And if so, are you going to continue doing that even though you guys can play the game now? Or is it still that you want to have more outside opinions, even though, like I said, you can play now?
So we have used outside opinions and we'll continue to. So I'll say, for example, I worked a bit on the cash wallet that came out this summer. And behind the scenes, the cash wallet that you saw that came out would not have been half as good without the incredible user testing that the team did. And that was a mixture of existing Sorare users who stepped up to the plate and said, hey, I'll test this out and wireframes for you. And sometimes it was a little complicated, a little bit rough. And then some testing with potential new users, right? And that's core to answering your question, which is Sorare employees are a very particular type of user, even when playing the game. And I think that in order to build great product, you need to get vision from different kinds of users. So while, yes, I'm so excited that we're going to be able to play the game, I think it'll make us more robust product owners. I think it'll be grounding our internal discussions more in experience than in theory. I think if we were to say, okay, well, we're our focus group now, you're going to get a lesser product than if we continue to expand who we're listening to.
I'm really intrigued about employees playing now. And it's something that a bunch of people I speak with have been talking to each other about. And is your expectation, I feel like I'm putting you on the spot here, but I've already started. Is your expectation that like everyone will play? Or is there kind of yes. Wow, that was quick.
Yes. Yeah, that's an easy answer. Our expectation is that everybody at the company, from the CEO to directors of product to talent acquisition specialists and finance people and lawyers, everyone is playing the game. That's 100% the expectation and the goal that we're setting.
And is that for all three sports, or is everybody kind of just staying? I mean, I realize that if, a lawyer in France who's only worked on the football product and has never watched a moment of baseball, I can appreciate that person not wanting to play Sorare MLB. I get it. But what is the expectation? Is it all three, or is everybody kind of just focus on what they do?
For the most part, it's choose your own adventure. I think, there's certain roles where I'm certainly going to push my team to be playing on specific product verticals, right? If you're owning the NBA product and you're not playing the NBA product, that's transparently, I'm way more of a baseball and soccer fan than I am a basketball fan, but I will be playing the NBA product this season. And I think that, other than that, it's a little bit choose your own adventure, because the goal of this, and the reason it was so easy for me to say yes there, is that when I was talking about the variety of feedback that's necessary to build a great product, right? We have a channel now where anyone who's playing the product can come in and give feedback and go like, hey, I was confused by this, or I think I see a bug here, or this looks wrong, right? And the more variety of internal sources you have, that also gives you a better swath of feedback. We got people whose native language is Italian, and they're like, hey, our Italian translations need a lot of work. And I flip over to the Italian app and I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, okay, yeah. So like, that's where the yes is so simple here, is like everyone should be playing so they can help us improve the product. And then certain roles should be really digging into certain spaces in the product.
So how long was the internal debate of allowing employees to play? Because we all know what the risks are. Like, somebody takes advantage of it and, buys a bunch of cards before gameplay changes or whatever it is. But was there much pushback in terms of allowing employees to play outside of maybe lawyers?
So I think actually internally, I think it was always a no-brainer that in a perfect world, we would all play. And so I think philosophically that was all there. I come from companies that are in the same space, right? So I'm highly aware of why that might be more difficult. We had our incredible legal team, who like really can't speak highly enough about them. They're superstars. Did a really good job of investigating the risks, investigating how to make sure this was fair to players, to make sure that regulatory bodies would be okay with it, right? Like they ticked all the boxes so that we could genuinely go to managers and go, we thought it through, and like this will only be a positive. And so I think that was really it was an internal debate. It was, they were really behind it as well. There's just a lot of details to solve, and they took care of those.
I would say that it was universally applauded in terms of, from users that I spoke to, that there are plenty of parts of the game where you don't really understand it unless you play. And so we're very excited that that more employees will be able to see that. Yeah. So we did have a few Twitter questions. There were some that I really wanted to discuss. And so I'm just going to read this first one out. Do you feel the current products can successfully attract customers away from your main fantasy and collector platforms? And if yes, how and why? Or do you think that you just need a complete relaunch, essentially?
Okay, so I'm a huge believer in our product. I will say I was sold to coming to Sorare as a fantasy player myself of U.S. sports products. So I can actually give like the personal answer as much as the company official answer that I believe in. So I can say personally, as someone who has played fantasy baseball forever, among many other fantasy sports, the best fantasy leagues I've ever played were the multi-season long keeper leagues. Those are like the purest joy a sports fan can experience when done right. And they're the most frustrating thing that you can experience when done wrong. It will ruin friendships. Do not create a keeper league with your friends if you really value them. This is my advice to you. But so that is one thing. And then another thing is things like daily fantasy, right? Like that you can dip in and out with your friends. And if one has to have like, an appendix surgery or, gets married and goes on their honeymoon or whatever, you're not like, dude, you're ruining my life, right? You can sort of be a social human with them.
Right.
And I think, one of the things that Sorare's DNA brings is the strategic element of a keeper league and all the benefits of that without the social downsides of like relying on your friends to produce your ongoing entertainment by not slacking any given week.
Sure.
And so I looked at Sorare and went, wait a second, that's what to me the cards unlock. It's the magic of collection and fantasy in one. It's the magic of really like feeling like the GM. We say that, but it's there. And for me personally, as a huge fantasy sports fan, it's that magic of having exactly the game I want without ruining friendships.
Best of both worlds, I suppose. The biggest topic, I think, that everybody ends up on when it comes to Sorare, NBA and MLB getting bigger is obviously just bringing in more users. And it's no secret, you guys know it. You're kind of open about it that yes, bringing in more new users is the easiest way for everything to kind of get lifted up. Did you think that the season 1 NBA product was enough to bring in new users on its own or let me rephrase that a little bit, because you obviously made changes. So you thought that there are things that had to be improved, but do you think the product kind of sells itself now? And if so, what do you do to make sure that product now gets in front of enough people that will also look at it and be like, oh, that looks awesome, I should try that too?
I don't think the product is perfect for selling itself yet. So I think like as someone working in the product org, I think I look at the product all the time and go, I'm so proud of this thing. I think that for season 1, we had great surprises and not so great surprises in terms of the trends of people coming onto the platform. And we can identify plenty of things that we have to do to make this what we're dreaming of, right? And it's our jobs and it's our commitment, not only to ourselves, but to our managers, is that we don't stop striving there. I do think that looking forward to season 2, I think that we've made some really strong investments into not only strengthening the core of the game, and that was really a lot of the focus going into the launch is, how can we make the core really strong? And then layering on additional things throughout the season. And that's, part of the season story here is not going to be like, okay, here's your game, goodbye, see you in the postseason. But, we'll continue to work on it and have delivery on an ongoing fashion in order to really boost that. Now, I think that in my mind, with season 2, I think we'll have a really great acquisition story. I think that sports fans will love a lot of the things we're adding, and I think it'll open us up to new eyes. And then I think in season 3, we'll do the same. And then hopefully it doesn't take too many seasons until it's just like churning itself.
Right. I'm going to agree with Courtside. It's the best fantasy game I've ever played. I think what was really strong about both NBA and MLB is that the fundamentally the core gameplay is really, really good. And I say that coming from the football side, that I think that's by far the best fantasy game actually ever created. The scoring matrix, I think matrices are all great. And it does feel like everything is on the right path. And certainly the new roadmap where we see where you guys want to see the product. Now it's easier for us to see, oh, okay, this is what they want to see. I mean, we all want to see 1 million users. It's not, I mean, that's a nice shared thing amongst the community here. But fundamentally, I think they're in the right place to move forward, which is great. One of the other questions, which I think kind of goes back to how many crossover users you have, but somebody was asking if it'll be possible to basically trade an NBA card for a football card or baseball for NBA. Is that, I imagine that is something that you guys have considered, but is there like a time frame of when that might be able to happen?
So, I mean, it's my personal dream, and it's the thing that I wanted us to have the day we launched MLB. We don't yet, so like clearly, I don't unilaterally make all our decisions. No, there's not a specific date we have in mind for this, but I can say like it being my personal dream. It comes up frequently. We talk about it a lot. It's one of those things where it's like a priority decision, how we've, you know, orchestrated how our markets work, how we've orchestrated how the product's tech stack works. And it's like a highly technical discussion, but it's something that comes up pretty frequently because I think that I think that there's a really compelling story to sports fans here to say, you know, hey, I'll trade you my LeBron for your Mookie. Don't come at me if that's a bad trade because I will trade you like 5 LeBrons for a Mookie. I just want Mookie, guys. But like I think that that's a really compelling story for fans. And then like from a business perspective, I think the way that facilitates seasonal moves between sports is like also really compelling as a story. So like, yeah, it's something that we talk about all the time.
So I think this is the last Twitter question that I at least wrote down from the ones that we got. And thank you to everybody for submitting those. Was there any consideration to basically blowing out rewards for this year, taking a loss on it, and so that everybody's like, oh, wow, look at all this stuff you can win at Sorare NBA, and just hoping that that's actually the tool that makes enough people see the game where they're like, oh, that I want to be part of that?
So I hear this. I read the Discord, guys. Like I hear this argument a lot. It's not new. A lot of people at the company read the Discord. It's not new to any of us. I think that, you know, as we're looking at season 2 and we're looking forward, one thing I want to call out is we saw successful growth in football and yes, in a bull market. I'm going to acknowledge that, right? But there are tools in football that we haven't yet brought over successfully to the NBA and MLB side that we're really focused on getting over that we think is going to be a huge mover for us. We're also introducing things like cash rewards, right? That's one of the things on football that was a huge mover that we want to get over here, right? Like there's pieces we're putting in place that we look at right now and go like, we think this will juice appeal in many ways. Now, will it juice appeal like throwing up $1 million contest? Maybe not, right? But I think that we're looking at this and going like, we're really happy with the pieces we're starting to put in place and where that's going to grow us for now. And then like, yeah, we know the strategy and it's something that we're aware of as a potential thing to pull when we go, yeah, now's the time for that. I think we've decided now's the time for the core investments we're making right now that we're really pleased with, that I hope drives, you know, a ton of growth on its own, both organic and like tell your friends about us. Yep.
So you bring up the $1 million prizes as I was going to bring up DraftKings, because we have done some stuff now with Rainmakers, and there are a lot of people who come from the DFS community who are trying to play Sorare, and they're used to those big prizes and, you know, look at all this that you can win. And do you look at those users, meaning those that go after the $1 million prizes DFS, as the ones that you want playing Sorare NBA? And if so, how do you draw them in and away from the $1 million DraftKings prize pools, which aren't really $1 million?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Let's not get into prize pools here because I feel like I could talk too much about that. So I think that like for me, here's our target audience is NBA fans, right? It's NBA fans. Anyone who loves the sport should be coming to our product. Now, one thing I will tell you about the sports entertainment industry, which I've worked in for a long time, is fans don't typically give up the current thing they're playing to try something new, right? If it's a new thing, they will come try it. That's not to say that we don't want to like take them totally from whatever they're doing now and get 100% of their eyeball time. Like that's everyone's dream, right? But I think like from my point of view, I want every NBA fan out there to know the name Sorare, to come try Sorare and to go like, this is really fun, right? Like I really enjoy this. I'm really drawn by the whole picture of the collection, of the fun, of the strategy, of the utility, of playing with my friends, of, you know, yes, the rewards and the whole package of rewards, right? And so like, yes and no, right? They're a subsegment of this population. They're a massive subsegment of this population. But I look at this and go, you know, I want them to come try us and fall in love with us rather than, you know, throwing necessarily an ad that's got a big number in front of them and they go like, oh, that's a bigger number than what I'm playing right now, right?
That's fair. That's fair. The last question I have, and if anybody in the chat has anything else that we haven't touched on and would like to, Kate, I really appreciate you taking all this time to discuss everything with us. Were there any questions or any discussions about changing the scoring matrix at all? To be honest, I remember before it launched, I think there were some rumors about the bi-weekly, and we are like, man, if you have more games, you're automatically going to win. And then the announcement was, it's just your best one. And we were all like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But were there any ideas of changing the gameplay much other than adding competitions?
No, you know, we actually do. We review the matrix before each season because this is when you can change the matrix, right? So we reviewed it. Unlike baseball, where we reviewed it and went, there's a gap and we can make the matrix better with relief appearances. This time we reviewed the matrix and went, actually, we're still really proud of this. It's a good fit. And so the discussion happened, but no, there really wasn't an aspect to matrix change that was appealing for this season.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Is there anything that you wanted us to discuss that we haven't gotten to?
Red Sox 2024
Oh, don't do it.
champions. I don't know. No, I mean, I think that really, the message I want to leave on is I think, you know, I'm really excited about the season 2 of the NBA. We, whether you realize it or not, a lot of that development was us listening to managers, listening to NBA fans, really digging into what people wanted and where we thought that investments would be really helpful in the game. I think that you're going to see really exciting things coming, not only with launch, but after launch this season. And so I just want to thank everyone listening and everyone not listening out there for the inputs that you gave. I think that we're going to have an incredibly strong season because of you. And yeah, just remember, we're going to have better rewards, more competitions, more alignment with the sports that you love, and 3D cards. We didn't mention 3D cards. The 3D cards are coming. I'm super excited. You know, we're seeing the football fans going to school with like Holland in their passenger seat, right? They're like training them in like little soccer goals they've built in their backyard. Yeah, guys, shoot me whatever notes into, just post it into Discord general. I will see it. I'm sorry, I lurk there all the time. Just post all your pictures when we get 3D cards in AR, and I want to see those because I'm so hyped for those.
The 3D cards, I will completely admit, I got, as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, I actually love these. And I thought it didn't actually, I was like, 3D, whatever. And then as soon as I saw them, yeah, you could spin them around. I was all in.
I know I was the same. I was like, okay, 3D. And then I actually I saw the prototype for it and I was like, wait a second. No, this is genuinely really, really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who has joined us. All of my questions were answered either here or in the roadmap update that was posted on Medium. We'll make sure that's linked in the description of this video on YouTube. But yeah, Kate, thanks so much and good luck this season.
Yeah. Thank you.